My name is Alina. I'm 23 years old and in my last year of college, aiming to become a journalist. But today, instead of looking forward to graduation, I'm stuck in a terrible situation. We just buried my dad less than a day ago. My dad, Martin, was always traveling for work, but he still made me feel loved. Now, the house feels so empty without him. It's a constant reminder of the gap he left behind. As I stand in the entrance of our home, still feeling numb from the funeral, my mom, Claudia, and my sister, Victoria, quickly share their plans. Their words hit me hard, like a loud, sad bell marking the end of our family's togetherness. We're going to sell this house, Claudia says, her eyes cold despite her pretending to be sad. Start looking for a new place, Elena. You need to move out soon. I can hardly believe what I'm hearing. Before I can even process my dad's death, my mom and sister are already thinking about money and what they can gain from it. It feels like a huge betrayal. You don't think you're entitled to anything, do you? Victoria taunts, with her boyfriend, Jan, laughing beside her. Their cruel amusement makes me furious. I shouldn't be hearing these words, especially now when the pain is so fresh. I never understood their greed and obsession with wealth and appearances. I was always the odd one out in the family, too serious and studious. Elena the dreamer, they used to mock. And now, faced with their scheming, all the years of indifference and mockery boil over. You're the worst, I shout, unable to hold back my anger. I'm done with this. I'm done with all of you. The bell rings, cutting through my outburst. Annoyed at the interruption, I wipe away my angry tears and open the door. A man in a dark suit stands there, holding a briefcase, and his face looks vaguely familiar. My condolences, he says solemnly. May I come in? Who is this stranger, showing up at the worst possible time with such a serious tone? I'm not ready to deal with anyone else right now, but something in his eyes tells me this isn't just a courtesy visit. I step aside and let him in, wondering what this means for our already fragile family. The echo of my father's laughter used to fill our home, softening the sting of my mother and sister's harsh words. Now the walls seem to close in on me, mixing memories of their hurtful comments with the emptiness his death has left. I always found comfort in my studies, hoping they would lead me to a meaningful life, away from the shallow desires that drove Claudia and Victoria. But as I sit at the dining table, it's hard to focus on anything but the void Martin's passing has created. Silent meals have become the new normal since Dad got sick and passed away. Victoria is always on her phone, and Claudia flips through high-fashion magazines, completely detached from our reality. Their latest plan to sell our home and leave me behind was the final blow to our family bonds. They seemed so eager to chase their dreams of luxury condos and designer lives that nothing else mattered. Dad had been our anchor, and I'd hoped for at least a semblance of unity after he was gone. But now, seeing their blatant opportunism, the illusion of family was shattered, and something inside me snapped. I was tired of being the outsider, the one who cared. I was ready to walk away from it all. Lost in these thoughts, the doorbell rings, a sound that now only means more disruption and bad news. At the door stands a man from my father's past, someone whose ties to our family had faded over time. Good evening, he greets me. I need to speak with you about your father's affairs. His formal tone feels out of place in our messy living room, a stark reminder of our family's discord. I nod and gesture for him to sit down. Claudia and Victoria peek out from the kitchen, their curious faces showing irritation. The man pulls out a stack of papers from his briefcase, his expression serious. I'm Mr. Adams, your father's attorney. He entrusted me with his will and some final instructions, he explains, adjusting his glasses with a seriousness that hints at significant news. Claudia leans forward, visibly intrigued, while Victoria tries to appear nonchalant but stays close by. As Mr. Adams prepares to speak, I steel myself for what's coming next, unsure of the impact it will have but certain our family dynamics are on the brink of change once again. The room fills with tension as Mr. Adams clears his throat and unfolds the document containing my father Martin's final wishes. Claudia and Victoria lean forward eagerly, their attempts at composure slipping since his passing. In accordance with your father's wishes, Mr. Adams begins, I am here to read the will and begin the process of carrying out his instructions. His gaze moves between each of us, perhaps assessing our readiness for what he's about to reveal. I can't shake a sense of dread. Years of living under my mother and sister's expectations had conditioned me to expect little and prepare for disappointment. Yet as the attorney starts to speak, it becomes clear that our expectations are about to be upended. To my daughter Elena, I leave the entirety of my estate, including the family home and all accumulated savings and investments. The room falls into a hushed silence, broken only by the soft shuffle of papers and the steady tick-tock of the grandfather clock. Mr. Adams continues reading, but his words barely register with me. All I can hear is the pounding of my heart and a buzzing in my ears. It can't be right. There must be some mistake. Me? I manage to stammer, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. But why? Victoria pushes her chair back abruptly, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and anger. Claudia, equally stunned, sits frozen, her mouth opening and closing silently. Jen, who had been quietly lingering in the background, steps forward as if to comfort or perhaps restrain Victoria. This has to be some kind of joke, right? Jen demands, but Mr. Adams only solemnly shakes his head. There's no mistake, he assures us. Martin was very clear in his wishes. He believed that Alina, with her principles and dedication, would best honor his legacy and manage his assets responsibly. Claudia finds her voice, her disbelief turning to anger. But what about us? She demands sharply, her voice shaking with fury. Are we supposed to get nothing while she gets everything? The question lingers in the air, thick with resentment from my mother and sister. I'm speechless, caught between the weight of this unexpected responsibility and the hurt of their obvious greed. Mr. Adams looks at me. Martin had his reasons, which he believed would become clear in time. Right now, we need to discuss the next steps and the details of the estate. As Mr. Adams speaks, I can't help but wonder what my father saw in me, what trust he had placed in my hands, and how I could ever live up to it amidst the wreckage of our family unity. The silence following Mr. Adams's revelation feels as heavy as the sorrow I felt at my father's funeral. Claudia and Victoria's anger fills the room, crashing against my shock like relentless waves against a cliff. For a moment, no one says anything. We're frozen in place, the weight of my father's will slicing through the air like a chill wind. My reasons, Mr. Adams continues, addressing me directly, are explained in a personal letter your father left for you, Elena. I am to give it to you after we finish here. Victoria's voice breaks the silence. There must be some mistake, she protests, her words echoing off the walls, igniting a conflict I have no desire to engage in. Jan puts a hand on her shoulder, trying to calm her, but her determination remains unyielding. How can she just inherit everything? Victoria's tone rises sharply, incredulous. And what about us? Are we suddenly strangers he's decided to abandon after everything we've done for him? She wields her words like a weapon, her disbelief escalating into a crescendo of frustration. Claudia's shocked facade gives way to anger. Exactly. There must be some provision for this, some oversight or option to challenge it. This is absurd. Her hands tighten on the chair's arms, her knuckles turning white. I finally speak up, my voice weak even to my own ears. I don't understand. Why would Dad do this? What was he thinking? My mind races with unanswered questions, all leading back to a man I now realize I may never have truly known. Mr. Adams takes off his glasses, rubbing his nose before replying. Martin had his reasons and he wanted you to understand them, in his own words. As for Claudia and Victoria, he turns to them, you have the option to contest the will if you choose. Though Martin's intentions were clear, and his mental soundness when drafting it is well documented. The room erupts into chaos once again, voices overlapping as Claudia and Victoria express their anger and confusion, scrambling to devise a plan. I barely register their words. My thoughts are fixated on the unopened letter, a final message from my father that rests ominously on the table. Taking a deep breath, I reach for it. The paper feels weightless yet heavy in my hands. Unfolding the folds, I prepare to read the words of a man who chose to speak beyond the grave rather than in life, a man who has bequeathed me an inheritance that feels more like a poisoned chalice than a gift of blessings. Alone in my room, with the door closed tight, I unfold the letter with hands that won't stop shaking. Each crease seems to whisper my father's voice, and as his written words emerge, I brace myself for the understanding they bring. Dearest Alina, it starts in his familiar handwriting. As you read this, I am sorry. Sorry I can't say these things to you in person. Sorry for leaving you with a burden no parent should pass to their child. His apology, immediate and heartfelt, cuts through the legal complexities and stark revelations of moments ago. I take a deep breath, finding solace in the scent of ink on paper. Your strength, your discipline, and your vision for a better world have never gone unnoticed by me. In you I saw the promise of a future built on honesty and integrity, far from the grasp of greed. The paper quivers in my grip, stirred not by a draft through the old window, but by the flood of emotions it releases. I continue reading, eyes fixed on the page. Elena, I have not been blind to the dynamics in our household. Your patience and hard work in the face of neglect from your mother and sister have been both my sorrow and my pride. Entrusting you with my entire estate is my attempt to reconcile the unfair burdens you've had to bear. With each sentence, my father weaves a tapestry of his unspoken observations and quiet support. The man who often seemed distant had been watching closely, understanding more than he let on. My only wish is that this inheritance grants you the freedom and resources to pursue the dreams that burn brightly within you. Don't feel obligated to mend what was broken long before you could make a difference. Live the life you deserve, my Elena. Folding the letter, I hold it against my chest, feeling the love etched in ink by a father who recognized his daughter's selfless sacrifices. A surge of determination mingled with the grief that had shadowed me since his passing, washes over me. Leaving the sanctuary of my room, I re-enter the tempest of my fractured family. Mr. Adams meets my gaze with a silent query as I join them. Claudia's stare is sharp and fixed on me, while Victoria paces like a caged animal, her earlier anger now tinged with desperation. "It's time we discuss what comes next," I declare, my voice steadier than I feel. Claudia scoffed. "What happens next is that we challenge this absurdity." Victoria nodded fiercely. "You can't just take everything, Elena. We deserve our fair share." Mr. Adams intervened. Challenging the will would be a lengthy and costly process with no guaranteed outcome. Martin's wishes are clear and well within his rights to enforce. With my father's heartfelt words weighing heavily in my thoughts, I faced them. The family that had never quite felt like a family. It wasn't my decision, but it was his, and I intend to respect it. Tension gripped us all like chains, but amidst the turmoil, one truth remained resolute. I would fulfill my duty, uphold my father's wishes, and perhaps in doing so, forge my own path towards a better future. In the days that followed, our home became a battleground of eerie silences and explosive arguments. Victoria and Claudia scoured legal avenues, consulting lawyers and searching for any loophole to contest the will. They clung stubbornly to the belief that they were entitled to Martin's legacy, viewing it more as their rightful inheritance than a reflection of a man's lifetime of work. Despite their persistent efforts, Mr. Adams remained steadfast, a calm presence amid the storm. His reassurances were a source of solace as we navigated the complexities of settling the estate. "The will is solid, Elena," he would remind me over cups of lukewarm coffee in the formal dining room. "You don't need to be concerned about their threats." Yet despite Mr. Adams's confidence, guilt gnawed at me. Was it fair to accept everything while leaving my mother and sister with nothing? Intellectually, I understood my father had his reasons, but emotionally, I struggled with the lingering sense of familial duty, a desire to mend what was broken, even knowing it might be beyond repair. My days were consumed by preparing for legal challenges and diving into my father's financial affairs. The responsibility felt overwhelming, analyzing numbers, making decisions about properties and investments I had never known existed. Each task felt like navigating through thick fog, but I was determined to honor my father's trust and see it through. Amidst scrutinizing financial statements, my thoughts drifted to the life awaiting beyond these walls, how I could use this inheritance to forge a path that aligned with my values, how I could make a meaningful impact on the world. Amidst the escalating chaos, Claudia and Victoria's true colors emerged in bursts of pettiness and malice. Victoria impulsively claimed sentimental family heirlooms, while Claudia hinted at dark secrets that could tarnish Martin's reputation. Their tactics were aimed at undermining me, testing my resolve, but I had learned to navigate their emotional traps with caution. On a particularly tense evening, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken threats and icy stares, I reached my breaking point. "Enough," I declared, the single word cutting through the tension like a blade. 3 pairs of eyes focused on me, uncertain, wary. "I can't give you what Dad didn't leave for you, but I can help you start fresh somewhere else." Their shock was tangible, a sudden shift in the power dynamics they had been trying to manipulate. "It won't be a life of luxury, but it will be a new beginning." Claudia's laughter cut through the air, devoid of humor. "A consolation prize from our dear Elena. How generous." Her sarcasm stung, but I remained resolute, shielded by years of hardened resolve. Despite the bitterness hanging between us, I stood firm. "It's not about winning or losing. It's a choice. Take it or leave it, but know this, I'm moving forward with or without your approval." Their response was a mixture of silence and reluctant nods, a fragile agreement born from the clash of self-interest and necessity. Retreating to my room, the weight of my father's letter in my pocket reminded me of the path ahead, one where I would navigate not just the inheritance, but also discover who I would become because of it. Days turned into weeks filled with meetings with Mr. Adams and navigating the complexities of managing my inheritance. Claudia and Victoria, begrudgingly accepting my offer, began their search for a more modest home. The tension eased somewhat, yet a coldness lingered in the air deeper than the approaching winter. It was a time of solitude amid chaos, the house growing emptier with each packed box and removed piece of furniture. I found solace in my father's study, a haven untouched by time, a capsule of the past where family tensions once simmered beneath the surface of daily life. The day arrived when Claudia and Victoria left the house for good. With a signed check and a brief farewell, they departed, taking with them remnants of a life forever altered. Standing in the doorway, I watched their car fade around the bend, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. It was time to focus on the future. With Mr. Adams' guidance, I established a charitable foundation in my father's name, dedicated to providing educational opportunities for disadvantaged students, echoing the aspirations of my younger self who once felt her dreams were out of reach within our home. I enrolled in graduate school, pursuing a journalism program that aligned with my long-held career goals. With my father's network and the resources now available to me, I secured an internship at a respected newspaper. My life became a whirlwind of activity, immersed in pursuing stories and advocating for justice. themes my father and I had often discussed during his frequent business trips, now seeming like distant memories. These days, life keeps me constantly moving, carrying the principles my father instilled in me wherever I go. The house, once confining, has transformed into a true home as I've made it my own. I've repainted walls, rearranged furniture, and welcomed a rescue dog, a lively companion whose barks and playful energy filled the once empty spaces with joy. Rooms that once witnessed family discord now echo with the warmth of friends, colleagues, and shared laughter. Occasionally, I retreat to my father's study, immersing myself in his old letters and weathered books. My gaze often rests on his signature at the bottom of his letter, the final message that reshaped my life. "Duty and love," he wrote, "are the strongest forces we wield. Use them well." In those quiet moments, surrounded by his legacy of words and wisdom, I silently pledge to honor his memory by doing just that.